All right, today I want to talk about burial mounds and cemeteries and why they're so like I think burial mounds are kind of they're suspect, as Ben Affleck says. Um, so I'm gonna start with here. So I was reading this manga. It's kind of an old manga, but I reminded me. I was thinking about burial mounds, and when you think about burial mounds, aren't they the same things as cemeteries? But then when you kind of think about it, they're actually not. They're slightly different. Like people say burial mounds are like sacred, and I don't disagree. But I don't. I think it's more like the spiritual energy is strong there, and there's a reason for it. I think it's not because I don't think it's because like um, like Indian tribes would bury their dead in piles like that. Like that doesn't make any sense. That wait, it's like would you put your relatives in just like a pile and just throw them in a pile and then just throw a little bit of dirt on them and then just that's it and then put a stone on top of them? That doesn't sound like a burial ritual. That sounds like a conquering nation. And that's what this picture is right here. And it's this manga. It's based off of it's called Kingdom. It's based off of like history books and the records of the grand historian in China. And there's this one general named Kanki, and he was a bandit, but he became a general, and so he's known for being ruthless. And they fought in this battle. They win, but they had to deal with 100,000 prisoners on the enemy side because they killed the enemy's general. And so the way that they dealt with them was they would take them to a mound. They take like 10, 12, like they take one unit at a time, something like 100 soldiers. They take them to like a hill, so you couldn't see what was happening from the other side. And they told all the prisoners that, yeah, it's fine. We're just going to release you one at a time. We just got to get your name and something like that. And they bring them around the hill and they chop their heads off. And then they throw all the heads into a pile. And they throw all the bodies in another pile. And then they go, okay, bring the next 100. The next 100 would come, chop their heads off, and they put them in the piles. And then afterwards, because they're on a hill, they would dig the hill, just put it over, they would burn the bodies, and then take the dirt from the hill and just throw it on top of the bodies after they burn. Burial mound. Like, look at this. These are all burial mounds. That's what you would logically do in a military situation. So I think these burial mounds are how the English were just slaughtering Indian tribes. I think that's what they actually are. And the reason why they put the rocks on top is to lock down the spirits, like that angry, revengeful, avengeful spirits. And that's why that energy is so strong in burial mounds. Like if you were just like slaughtered when you were told you weren't, when you have like unfinished business as a spirit, so that spiritual energy would be massive there. That's why. So they put the rocks down as like a symbol to hold down that energy. And another anime I watched. It was a little while ago. I mentioned it before. It's all right. It's like a movie series. It's called Doom Megalopolis. And right in the first episode, the whole thing is about. It opens its episode with the narrator saying a city is like a organism, and the people are like it's a giant organism. And when they wanted to build up the cities in Japan, there was like the people led by this guy Masakato or something like that revolted. They didn't want that. They wanted to keep their culture, their tribe, and all that. And so they killed him. And this is where they buried him. They threw him in a mound. And they put a giant rock on top of him. And then in this story, this anime, this dude. Let's see if I can get a picture of him. He's a creepy dude. He's like a demon possessed type guy. But he knows that he's demon possessed, and he's doing it all for a purpose to awaken these cultures, the original culture of the land of Japan. That's why he's doing it. He looks like kind of like a Nazi vampire type dude, and that's the Germans are all into this kind of shit. And so he tries to awaken that spirit from the mound, so he can retake Japan to what it's supposed to be, not Western like cityscape where they all kill you, commit suicide all the time. But yeah, I think that's the actual reason for the burial mounds. It's not something like where they would like think about it. Like, would you Would you want to just like bury your friends and family and just throw them on the ground and then throw some dirt on them? Like that doesn't sound like a sacred ritual, right? It sounds more like someone killed the guy and just let him rot. They didn't want to like let the bodies rot everywhere, so they threw them all in a pile, or they lined them all up, and then they under like a false premise, like we're gonna let you go, and then they kill them all, and then just let them drop right in a mound, and then they either burned it, which went down to the bones. That's why there's always bones in the burial mound, and the land, like they either threw dirt on it afterwards, or like over time, nature just took over and it turned into a dirt mound. I'm in Wichita, Kansas right now, and about, I don't know, 10 miles west is this state park called Cheney State Park. And I went there just to like go for like a nature walk. And it's like a giant water reservoir made from like a dam. And I don't know, I found this little trail. I'm walking through the trail, and there's like a little creek running down the thing. And I looked down, I'm smoking a cigarette on like this little bridge where the creek is. And I look down, and there's like something jutting out of the ground. So I go down, and it's a bone. It looked like a human bone, and it was like looked like the two bones that like are in the either in the shin area or in the arm here. These two bones, I don't know. And I was like contemplating whether I should take them or not. And I dug a little more to see if I could find more, and I found another bone that seemed like it was the attachment to the arm. I don't know. And I probably could have kept digging, but I didn't know. I wasn't sure if I should take the bones or not. So I just left them there for now. But I made a little mark to know where I was, because I don't want to do some maybe that whole area in Cheney Park, State Park, where the dam, it's a water reservoir dam. I bet you if you got a diver to go down into that reservoir and dug up the dirt a little bit, you'd start finding bones. I think that's what these dams are for. What a lot of the dams are for. It's either to hide history or to hide giant slaughters that they did back in the day when they took over the Americas. That's what I think happened. So far, I don't know for sure, but that's my theory now. But anyway, I was getting into cemeteries. I think cemeteries are more fascinating. I've talked about this in a bunch of videos, but the Christian church is obsessed with bones, and not just the saints' bones. If you think about it, I previously only mentioned that they're obsessed with the bones of saints, the bones of wizards, because they have special properties, I guess. They're piezoelectric crystals, but they're also obsessed with regular people's bones. Think about a cemetery. Organs get taken out, and then the body gets filled with formaldehyde, which preserves the body. And then the body gets placed into a thick wood box called a coffin, and then buried 6 feet on the ground. 6 feet social distance. They lower that body into the ground, and then cover it up with dirt, and then slap a massive stone on top of it. I think that was the church's way of taking over plots of land spiritually. It's like it's kind of like the game of Risk. You know, in Risk, where like the more units you have in your little location, the better chances you have at beating the next location, the enemy location. So they would. That's why they started burying everyone, to like maintain a hold spiritually. And they used all the exhuming, the formaldehyde, all that stuff, so that the body doesn't decompose fast enough, so that they get like it remains there longer. This like that energy remains there longer. Now I don't know if it would be as powerful as the burial mound. Maybe they started doing this because they realized that the burial mound thing caused like a spiritual like change. Like that energy was too strong, so they had to counter it with their own thing, which is the cemeteries. But yeah, the Christian church did some crazy shit with this. Like it's not like I don't think there's anyone at the helm. That's what this picture is on the background here. It's from the show Loki. I watched that the other night. It's actually pretty good. It's like kind of like the Christian church or the government or the world government. If they have there's no one at the helm. There's no one at the wheel. So the whole show, Loki, is that Loki is always like doing crazy shit, like he's going off the timeline because he's Loki, he's kind of mischief, and so they arrest him and they put him in the time variance agency. Takes him over where they determine what to do with him, and it's like this super futuristic agency, and they're like really bureaucratic and like kind of like 50s looking, like this. Uh, and they're like located outside the dome almost, and it's all like giant structures like Coruscant in the Star Wars movies. How it's like all like giant cityscape. That's what the TVA looks like, and then it's like behind the veil. And so Loki goes there, and they end up recruiting him to help take down other variants, or they were just going to erase him. So he goes, "Okay, I'll help." And the the they slowly start to figure out that the TVA agents, they all think that they were born in the TVA. They were born in that realm, and then they get to work for the TVA. But they slowly start to figure out that they were all the variants. The people that work for the government were the variants. And I think it's the kind of an analogy for what's going on right now with us, with truthers, I guess. We're the variants. Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's kind of hard to explain. But I think that's the same thing is going on with the church. There's no one at the helm. It was all like a spiritual thing. Uh, and with the TVA, they had this weird elevator. That's why I have a picture here. And I started to prove that this is actually the government or the Catholic Church or something. I started looking up these letters just on Google, and almost all of them, the first like choice is a government agency or a government paper about radio signals, or a government contract about preventing radio signals at this certain frequency at this certain time. Like TSL is the Transportation Security Laboratory. Like, what the fuck? What is that? And it's in New Jersey too, which is weird. It's right near me. But what did they do? It says they helps protect our nation's civilian air transportation system by something about bombs they put in here. Multi-laboratory time for applied research, test, and evaluation. Its blast-resistant laboratories are equipped to evaluate explosives detection equipment and imaging equipment against an extensive library of domestic, foreign, and homemade explosives. What is that? What do they actually do? There's tons of agencies like this. Yeah, like, if you ever looked at, I remember web scraping. Every single government agency, it's like, it's not uncountable, but there's like tens of thousands. And they all have these weird roles. Who was working at these places? And like, it even brings me back to the Smithsonian. Like who was working for the Smithsonian? Like the guy I was in contact with about this Dragon Moon thing. I re-looked at like what he said to me about like where there's possible location of real freaking dragon bones, and he like his response, like once he like actually looked into it, he was like, oh yeah, it might be there, but dragons never existed, and the dinosaur laboratory is right near there, but that's about the best I could do for you. Like, what do they do? What does he do at this place at Smithsonian? What do you mean that's the best you can do? Why don't you tell me who was on the case then at that time? Why don't you like? Why wouldn't you be interested in that? You're the bone guy, right? He just blows it off like it's nothing. Like, I feel like it's all robots. There's no one at the helm. That's what I'm trying to say. But I've been seeing a lot of stuff about burial mounds. I think cemeteries are more interesting. I think burial mounds were just death. They're where they just slaughtered everyone. I think that's what they actually were.